In the Gun, episode number 52. Some headlines to hit, the NFL draft to recap. Plenty to get to here on this edition of ITG. And the trio is reunited. We've got Big O back, baby. Oh, yeah. I'm Wes Uhler with the best teammates in the business here. Of course, the Runaway beer truck, Owen Schmitt, and the signal caller, Jed Drenning. This episode of Bet Online brought to you by, or this episode of Bet Online, this episode of ITG brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your basketball information, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's basketball playoffs. Bet Online is always your sports information headquarters this season, and they've got you covered for all your sports wagering needs, whether that's basketball, baseball, NHL, hockey, UFC, and boxing. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to get all your betting information, including live bet options, and also play all your favorite casino and card games you can right from your house. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use the promo code Bleav when you sign up to receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. That's BLEAV at Bet Online, where the game starts. Gentlemen, to get us started here, a little surprise for you, all right? I didn't bring this up in our pre-production meeting. I wanted to get you guys on your toes here. The WVU baseball team just mercy ruled Pitt. No big deal. Beating them 10-0 in the seventh inning, and they called the game. Now, this is Division I college basketball. I didn't know they had the 10-run mercy rule. Like, this is Little League. Like, this is, the Cal Ripken leagues, or this is the Babe Ruth leagues, or these are, the Little League World Series. Apparently, that's a thing in D1 baseball, and our dear Mountaineers, well, they made Pitt ESHI. You know where I'm going with this. 10-0. The game just got called in Morgantown in front of more than 4,000 fans, the third biggest crowd ever in WVU baseball history. So, 12th ranked team in the country, the WVU baseball team is rolling, and they just stomped a mud hole. No mercy. Well, we gave them some mercy in the seventh inning. 10-0. How you like me now, baby?
Yeah, baseball team's rolling this year, dude.
They're
it's been
awesome.
A lot of fun to watch. A lot of fun to watch.
It's funny that this happened the way it did, because it struck me. I was even going to mention this in our Around Campus segment. Some of these scores to some of these games that we've been dropping on Big 12. Big 12 is good baseball. And some of these scores, they're like softball league scores, but one of the teams forgot the beer. I mean, 18-4. I mean, some of these scores are crazy.
Just went down to Waco and gave Baylor a hurting for 3 straight games. Yeah.
Yes. So
bats have been rolling.
They're hitting well, they're pitching well, and this is the right time to be playing their best baseball of the year. They're kind of coming down the home stretch here. First place in the Big 12, big series coming up this weekend at home against Oklahoma. So if you're looking for a winning team, it's supposed to be nice weather this weekend. Get your butt up there to Mon County Ballpark. What's it called now? Wagner Field, I believe. They just recently changed the name because they had a nice donation there from a previous player, but. I tell you what, nice weather, good team, number 12 in the country, and a real chance to finish as Big 12 regular season champions. Owen, from where the baseball program was when you and I are in school, you talk about leaps and bounds. It's awesome what they've been able to do.
Dude, it's been great. And I don't know if any, people that are listening in, if you haven't been up to that ballpark, you definitely have to make a visit. It is such a gorgeous field. And, this is the best time in Mountaineer history, honestly, to watch some baseball. So definitely, if you can, check them out. They'd love all the support they can get. They've been absolutely killing it this year.
Well, they certainly have. It is. It's awesome. It's really cool to see. 12th in the country, like I said, right in the hunt for a Big 12 regular season title, and big series against Oklahoma this weekend. So yeah, like Owen said, if you haven't been there yet. If you have and you just want to get back, great team, great series. It's supposed to be, like I said, and this weather's finally supposed to turn a little bit this weekend, I think, from this crappy rain we've had the last week or so.
Snow that I got.
Yeah, how about that? My goodness.
This is
Jed, it's hockey. It's like it's hockey season for Jed, not baseball season.
16 inches between Davis and Canaan. It just won't stop. But this isn't hyperbole to say this about this baseball team. We're on pace we have a shot at breaking the all-time single season wins record. This could legitimately be the best team in school history. It could be. It could be the greatest baseball team in the history of Mountaineer baseball, and this is your chance to go be a part of it and see it as it's happening in real time. That's pretty cool. Like Owen said, if you haven't been to that ballpark, what an experience that is. It's one of those, it's almost surreal. It's like you're in Morgantown, but you don't feel like you're in Morgantown, right? It's one of those types of, but what an opportunity to see a great baseball team playing great baseball in a great league and dismissing and dispatching, as they should very quickly, a not so great Pitt Panthers team. So
yeah, that's right. Oh man, that really breaks our heart. I mean, I tell you what, the mercy rule on Pitt, they're really struggling. I mean, it's tough to see. You hate to see it. Not if you're watching here on YouTube, you can
where
probably
would
see
this put
my
Randy
nose
Mason?
growing like Pinocchio.
If they win the Big 12, I was asked this on Twitter this week.
Mm-hmm.
Where would that place Randy Mason in the annals of all sports head coaches at West Virginia? The guy's putting together a heck of a resume, right?
So,
and if you win the Big 12 conference, knock on wood, a lot can happen between now and then.
sure.
But if you do that, you position yourself for a pretty interesting conversation in terms of what you're achieving and the track record that you've established in Morgantown.
That's well said. And you know what? Maybe we can add that to our list of off-season topics. We can do like a Mount Rushmore of WVU coaches or something like that. Because you know what? It's interesting. You said there's a lot of the big name, the revenue sport guys that would come to mind, right? I mean, we'd talk about Don Nealon. We'd talk about Rich Rodriguez. We'd talk about Bob Huggins. You know, I mean, heck, you could maybe even throw John Beeline into the fringes of that conversation. But two people that would absolutely deserve to be in that, Jed, I think you're right. Randy Mason is one of them, and then Nikki Izzo-Brown, the women's soccer coach.
Oh, dude.
Who
Nikki is an absolute beast, dude.
When she took the women's program over 27 years ago, 27 years, they were a club team. And now they're one of the best women's teams in the country. They were just in the national championship game a few years ago, were national runner-up. They won the Big 12 last year. All she does is win the Big 12. They've done that like 5 times in the last 7 or 8 years. So it would be interesting to have. Maybe we'll have to save that for an off-season day, because you have the obvious football and basketball names, but someone like Nikki Izzo-Brown, someone like Randy Mason probably definitely deserves a shout in those conversations too. So maybe that's something that we'll add to the list here. Speaking of our baseball team, I don't know, Jed, could they find themselves in Mexico in the coming years if they keep this up, playing some big games? Because it's just football and basketball now, but a pretty crazy story that the three of us were talking about in a little text, a little group chat that we have earlier this week. Yeah. If you've listened to the show over the months, we've talked about how Brett Yormark has this big vision for the Big 12 and how there's been some very interesting things that we've seen with that already. Well, another one reported this week is that the conference could be looking to play some football and some basketball games in Mexico.
Yeah, they're talking Kansas-Houston hoops game, potentially in Mexico City. They're toying with the idea. You have that world-class soccer facility in Monterrey. Now, I had to bone up on my Mexican geography to ask myself, all right, how long?
Where's Monterrey?
If we draw the short straw and have a Thursday night game in Monterrey, Mexico, okay. So,
Jed, you're not going to get home till Friday afternoon.
Yeah. So at least it's northeastern Mexico. I will say that. So I haven't checked the flights, but it might be closer than Lubbock, to be honest with you.
Might be.
But
be closer than Provo. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about that. But I mean, first thing I would have to do, if in fact it turns out to be us, look, I let my passport expire in 2004. I played ball in Germany in '94. It last 10 years. I didn't renew that thing, right? So I'd first have to get my passport renewed. But very ambitious by Mr. Yormark. Now the question would be, all right, what are you trying to achieve by this? Is somebody cutting a check? Because obviously the networks aren't behind it, because it's a cost to them. They just as soon keep the game more local for them and in the Big 12 circuit. But I do think, based on the conversations that I've heard, is they're trying to follow the the NFL model and build fan bases that might, enjoy the college football sport at large. And it's an interesting premise. But I think what you can be assured of, Owen, is we won't be the only league to try something like this. First of all, they already got the game in Ireland. The ACC's kind of tapped into some of that. It was Notre Dame, but now you got FSU heading that way. Some different teams that play that game in Ireland. But I think you could see the SEC, maybe the Big Ten. It all depends the who and the where. But I think it's going to happen with other leagues as well, to some extent.
Yeah, the money talks, son. The money talks. I'm sure you'll start seeing that stuff a lot all over the place. I mean, college football in general as a sport is really starting to grow, in my opinion, like especially probably more so, let's say Europe. And I know that sport, as far as like leagues, high school leagues, have more development over there and stuff. So the game is getting more popular amongst, just the average folk as well. But I can totally see, like I said, and like you were saying, I mean, the money talks. It's going to be there.
No doubt about it. I mean, I played ball in Europe in '94, and there were pockets of interest for American football. Of course, there was NFL Europe on down the line. Well, the NFL hasn't really planted its flag in Europe, but they have sprinkled quite a few seeds.
Yeah.
And now here we are 3 decades later, there is a following. When you talk to folks who, frequent major European cities, whether it's London or whether it's Berlin, whether it's even Barcelona, you'll see NFL jerseys on the street, whereas a couple decades ago, you didn't see that. So wherever there is a brand opportunity to position yourself to sell some merch, I mean, look, the Premier League does it. I mean, Wes, you know better than anybody. I
Absolutely.
mean, you see, Manchester United jerseys in the U.S. all the time, or whoever
they're playing preseason games here this summer.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you can position yourself to maybe create even enough interest or gen up enough interest to sell a little product or sell a little merch, of course you're going to do that. But this isn't going to happen overnight, and don't expect yourself to turn around and see 5 regular season games for the Big 12 and another. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a sprinkle here, a sprinkle there, see how it goes, tinker with it, maybe revisit it, maybe not. But that's kind of what you're looking at.
I think you guys are right. And if it goes well, maybe it expands a little bit, not in the sense of like all around the globe, but, maybe you play, you try and get a basketball game at Madison Square Garden every year, something like that as well, too. You have a game in Mexico, you have a basketball game at MSG, things like that as you kind of just spread that footprint, build those fan bases. I think there is some example of other leagues who have done that. And now, Jed, I mean, you mentioned the soccer example. The Champions League. Okay. I know some people will be familiar with that. That's kind of like the Super Bowl of soccer. All right. It's well, to be fair, the World Cup is, but that's every 4 years and that's international, right? United States, Argentina, Germany, England. Champions League is the club version, if you will, basically. So Manchester United, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, the best teams in England, the best teams in Italy, the best teams in Germany and France and Spain, they compete for the Champions League. And they're talking about starting in 2026, how they could move that outside of Europe and maybe have a Champions League final in New York City or in Los Angeles or something like that. So this is something that the other leagues are doing to try and, gain ground in the United States, build that footprint in the United States. So I think, again, there's already some precedent for it as well, too.
Can't you kind of see, like, instead of Michigan at Northwestern, Michigan versus Northwestern in Toronto?
Right.
That type of thing.
Right.
Yeah. In other words, what are you really giving up in exchange for a pretty good branding opportunity? So I do think the future, you might see some of these other leagues experimenting to some extent on a limited basis with this as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it'll be interesting, certainly, to keep an eye on this as it goes along. And we'll make sure to track all the flights for Jed and everything if it does, in fact, come down to that.
Yes, please do.
A thank you to our friends at GoMart as well, too, here to keep you going. GoMart, a presenting sponsor of ITG. Make sure you're signing up for your GoMart rewards as you travel all throughout the Mountain State and onward. Jed, did want to make sure to mention this, Owen as well, too. Athletic APR, which is your academic progress rate, I believe. Correct, Jed?
Yep, that's right.
Which is essentially an aggregate score of your sports programs and how they're performing academically. That
you break it down individually, but then collectively overall as a department. Yeah.
The simplest way. Well, WVU with a 990 AR or APR, score in this year's edition of those numbers. That's the highest in school history. And according to our local, our resident statistician, Jed Drenning, that's a higher score than Penn State, baby. Oh, what's up, Big Ten? I thought we didn't have very good academics down in Morgantown. Well, we're beating Penn State. How you like that? But seriously, that's pretty cool. Those are things that we like, obviously. It's good to see all these students doing well in the classroom as well as on the field. And, hey, if we're above a couple of the ACC and the Big Ten schools that normally like to stick their nose up at us, that's a nice added bonus as well, too. One more bigger picture thing here before we start to hone it in a little bit. Jed, we finally got some clarity, some dates, some more information about this new 12-team playoff that's going to be rolling out in 2024 for college football.
We did, and if you bear with me, what I'll do is I'll pull up the schedule. It's kind of interesting. that when they release the dates, of course, this is going to happen this year. It's going to happen next year.
Right.
So we're not talking the 23 season. We're talking the 24 season.
Yeah, I should have clarified that because I guess the 24 playoff will be this season.
That's right.
It's for the 24 season playoff, which would be in early in the end of 24, early 25.
That's right. So we're talking, we expand to a 12-team playoff once the season kicks off in August of 24, not this year. Right. So the dates will look like this. Now, again, bear in mind, it's a 12-team format. The top 4 teams will get a bye. You're ranked 1 through 4. Now, the caveat being you must be a conference champion to be among those top 4. So Notre Dame won't be among the top 4 unless they choose to join a league. It's almost the Notre Dame rule, right? Now, outside of that, what's going to happen? It's going to take the top 6 overall conference champions, and it's going to take the 6 highest ranked by the committee non-conference champions. So, for instance, this past season, you would have seen some interesting matchups that would have included number 12 Tulane at number 5 TCU. You would have had Kansas State at Tennessee. You would have had USC at Alabama. Now, again, remember, only the first round is on campus sites at home. After that, they go to neutral site venues for the bowl situation. So the first round games that will be played on campus will take place. There will be one game Friday evening, December 20th, 2024. So this is the week of Christmas. You're going to kick this thing off on campus. Now, students won't be around, but you have to think there will be a novelty to this that creates enough buzz that there's going to be some high energy environments here. So you have one game Friday night. Then you have Saturday, the next day, December 21st, 2024, 3 games, early afternoon, late afternoon, and evening. So 4 games on that Friday and that Saturday. Then moving forward to the quarterfinals, you skip ahead to Tuesday, December 31st. That will be the Fiesta Bowl that night, 1 quarterfinal game. Wednesday, January 1st, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, early afternoon, Rose Bowl game, late afternoon, Sugar Bowl that night. So there you have your quarters. Now you're down to the final.
That's going to be a lot of fun.
4. It is. I mean, think about this, stretching over a handful of weeks. The semifinals will be Thursday, January 9th, the Orange Bowl, and Friday, January 10th, the Cotton Bowl. So now you're up to your national championship. Now, one of the complaints was this seems a little late for a college football national championship, but it's the nature of the modern beast. Monday, January 20th, it will be decided at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. But again, what I think is cool is the fact you get this thing rolling with these on-campus games in the first round, which would be Friday, December 20th and Saturday, December 21st. So now what you can aspire to do as a non-blue blood program is get yourself in position to battle for one of those 12 spots. That might mean winning your league, but the beauty of this situation is it might not mean winning your league. If you're a good enough football team with a good enough resume in a given year, now you might think that, well, the SEC is going to get 5 or 6 teams in. Hey, fair enough. If that's the case, that's the case. But you know what? Only one of those 5 or 6 will have a first round bye. So I think what it might create, interestingly enough, is just imagine an SEC team being forced to travel north on December 21st to Wisconsin or Michigan State or Morgantown or Oregon State, and anywhere north.
LSU plays at Wisconsin or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all these northern venues.
Florida State plays at Michigan. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, just imagine back, Owen, when you were playing, if this format existed, you guys might have hosted an SEC game the week of Christmas at Mountaineer Field. I mean, that's just cool. Like, actually, I've done this. And if you remember, we discussed the article that I wrote for Antonic.
I was going to say, yeah, we went over some of
you guys would have actually gone to Oregon, Owen. If I remember
that would have been amazing.
I think the other year you would have gone to Kansas to play that Todd Reesing Kansas team. So
Aqib Talib.
Fascinating possibilities. How can you, I don't on any level understand detractors here. To me, this might be the single greatest leap forward for college football since they tried to get 1 and 2 right in the postseason. Right?
Yeah.
Now, that was kind of a mess the way they did it through the BCS, but evidence of effort. This is a huge leap forward. We'll have all off season to talk about the how and the why and the reasons this is great. But But the dates were released. That was very newsworthy. Those dates were. So one more year of a 14 playoff, then we move to this.
Big O, I tell you what, on campus college football playoff games, that's going to be electric.
Oh, dude, the playoff is, like Jed said, that's going to bring a whole new atmosphere to college football, and like you were describing there, a home playoff game, woo-wee, especially at Mountaineer Field. I'm telling you right now, anywhere is going to be electric. But I mean, and I like the Friday night, Saturday night deal.
Yep.
So get a taste and then move on. Now, again, this will be structured much the same way as the NCAA tournament. So, in other words, the winner of 8 versus 9 will play 1, whoever the 1 seed is. Okay, so in other words, last year 8-9 would have been Kansas State at Tennessee. The winner would have played Georgia. It's not like, well, what happens if 12 upsets 5? Does the 1 seed get the lower seed? No, it's just like the NCAA tournament in terms of the seeding. So you're going to be bracketed accordingly. But it's really cool. It's really cool.
It is. It's awesome. It's exciting, I think. And as we've kind of detailed, more teams in it, more teams with a chance to be in it down the stretch. It is, the soul of the game has certainly changed. And we've all kind of voiced our different opinions on that over these episodes and everything. But at the same time, while we haven't always loved that, I think this is something to be excited about, and this is something that everyone can get behind and will certainly, I think, have a benefit for the sport. So not this year, but next year we're getting pretty close to this 12-team playoff, and we got a little more clarity in what the process, what the dates, the locations, and all those things are going to look like. Final little piece of housekeeping, final little headlines here before we get into some NFL draft recap, talk about Dante and where some of the other guys landed as well too. The transfer portal, we've been, keeping you abreast of all this as it goes along through the weeks. Portal still, or I guess just about to close here, right, Jed? And we had a little bit of a casualty for WVU, maybe the first eyebrow raiser of this transfer window, and that was the announcement just a few days ago that running back Tony Mathis is going to be entering the transfer portal.
Yeah, the window has closed.
Or it has closed, that's right.
Yeah,
so that
closed.
He entered the transfer portal, I should say.
What happened was he had a conversation going into the weekend with the staff, mulled it over, and the window closed at the end of April. The announcement, the release came out after that, but the paperwork was in. So what you're looking at, we talked in the last episode, Wes, about coaches holding their breath all across the country for that window to close. What are you going to lose, right? Well, everybody's going to lose some. But I do think we'd all agree that from a casualty standpoint, let's start with this. We mentioned Jalen Shelton. We mentioned Eric Burton, and more power to them. I hope those kids go off and do great things. But I do think we managed to reel in, and we're still trying to. The window closed in terms of the kids entering it, but you'll continue for the coming weeks and months to pursue other needs that your roster might need addressed. So we even have a kid, we're taping here on Wednesday night. We had a kid visit today that's going to go to visit Dion on Friday. So a kid that we recruited and had pretty strong ties to coming out of high school, but he was at Kentucky. So we're still, obviously, as is everybody else, we're after some kids that can help us. But when you talk about Tony Mathis, guys, we were texting about this as it happened. And you know what? To me, look, I don't want to lose Tony. Let's start with that. He will always have his night of milk and honey against Baylor with the 160 plus when we so desperately needed it. He stepped up.
Big O and I there just having a grand old time.
Absolutely. But as the portal goes, compared to some scenarios that you can and have encountered, how can you complain about this? First of all, he's a grad transfer. He got his degree, right? Second of all, he's in a very crowded room with a lot of talent. Third of all, he was a great teammate. I mean, this guy never created problem or issue number one. And he had all the opportunities in the world to do so, complaining about not enough time, not enough this. He waited, he got his shot, he made the most of it. He's just part of a very crowded and talented and deep room. I mean, I think we've established that the pecking order is going to be some combination of CJ and Jalen, and Justin's going to steal some snaps. The shiny new object that everybody wants to focus on is Jaheim because he's so exciting and dynamic. You saw what he could do in the spring game. And then Owen, you mentioned in the text, big boy coming in. He's kind of the elusive X factor, and Oliver, the Oliver kid who's going to be here this summer. So more power to Tony Mathis. Thank you for everything. You got your degree. You got your diploma. You're always going to be a Mountaineer. Now, I hope you go out and just light somebody up. I just hope it's not against us. All right.
Yeah,
Who
stay out
knows
of the
where
Big
he's going
12.
to land these days? You don't know who's going to be your friend and your enemy the next day. But great kid. This, on some level, you'd like to be greedy and say, oh, but he's a productive kid and we like him in a pinch. And sure, he's going to get some snaps and he's going to get some carries. Stick around and be part of that room. I get it. Right. I get it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be cheering for him anytime he's not playing against us, and hopefully he's never playing against us. But I really, really wish the best for this kid.
Yeah, I mean, he did exactly what he came here to do. Got his degree. First and foremost, that's what every young man should be thinking of when they do come here to West Virginia and get an opportunity to play and have that full ride scholarship. Him being a senior, like you were saying, Jed, with kind of a crowded room coming in, he's got to do him. Right. He's done his due diligence. He's been a class act
2 years
the
left.
whole time he has been there.
He'll have 2 left.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. He's got 2 years left.
Yep.
And I mean, that's a lot of football.
Yep.
And I don't know do we know where he's even.
No, not at this
point. I haven't seen anything. I haven't even seen about him taking any visits or anything yet. Yeah.
What I mean? So, who knows where he's going to land, but I wish him the best as well. I know that was probably a tough decision to make. And selfishly, like you were saying, Jed, yeah, you hate losing a guy like that, so much experience to be able to kind of teach the next gen a lot of the ins and outs, but he's got to do what he's got to do. And the landscape of college football has changed so dramatically in the last couple of years. He's got something rolling upstairs, so he's got a plan.
Yeah. No, well said. And you know what, guys, I know we mentioned the baseball team at the start of the segment, or the start of this episode, right? But to go around campus one more time here, I think there's some parallels. We just saw Jimmy Bell, center from the men's basketball team, enter the transfer portal as well too.
That's true.
A guy who started just about every single game last year for the Mountaineers, kind of like Tony Mathis, prominent, pretty prominent role on the team. Not top of the list, but certainly a regular contributor, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you look at how WVU adds a lot through the transfer portal. Bob Huggins adds a lot, including Jesse Edwards, who's a big-time guy from Syracuse who plays the same position. And maybe Jimmy just looks around and thinks, not that I'm not going to play here, not that I'm not going to have an opportunity, but I'm kind of coming to the end of my college career here. I want to go somewhere where I think the room isn't so crowded. I'm going to have more of an opportunity to enjoy my final years of my collegiate basketball. I think there's some again, not the exact same script, but I think there's some similarities with Tony Mathis. You look around and you say, hey, my role might be diminished a little bit this year just because of the plethora of talent that we have in my group, in my room. Maybe I want to go somewhere where I'm just going to have a little more opportunity to shine, where, again, I might only play for another year or two. I want to maximize that. I don't want to be fighting for snaps and playing a reduced role. I just want to go somewhere where I can, play the game that I love. Like you guys said, I'm not going to fault a guy for that. We certainly wish him all the best. And Big O and I will always thank him for his service on that Thursday night game against Baylor that led to us having such a great time in box 5 at Mountaineer Field.
2 things. First, there certainly would have been disruption in this room much sooner than now, if not for the incredible relationship forged between Chad Scott, and that room, right? I mean, Owen, we've talked about it before. Your position coach always has a special place in your heart. And now that's one of the reasons we're excited that Chad Scott's bearing that OC title, right? But those kids have really picked up what he puts down. Tony Mathis was close with them, as were the rest of the kids in that room. So the fact that he maintained order and kept those kids and retained those kids as long as he did speaks to the relationships in that room. So instead of questioning, well, hey, how'd you lose one? I'd more look at it like, how'd it take so long to lose one when others lose them much more quickly? And then one more portal note, Wes, since we last met, picked up a DB from Georgia Southern, Anthony Wilson.
Yep.
Very productive player. Those guys don't grow on trees. This is a kid that can help us. 100+ tackles last year. He's very active, has a nose for the football. He can play in space, Owen, but he's not afraid to charge downhill and make some things happen in the box. So you like that type of kid and the things that he brings to the table. The other thing that jumps out when you study the kid, over 100 tackles last year, yes, but over the course of the last 3 years, over 100 assisted tackles. And I always say that when I'm evaluating defenders, that's one of the things I look for, because that's that last dog to the pile looking for that one bite of the bone, right? So those are the hungry kind of dogs you want in your room. And I'm glad that we're adding him to that back end, and I think he can help too.
Yeah, we need a little help back there too.
Mm-hmm. Sure
we do. We 2 years ago lost a lot there in terms of experience and pedigree. And yeah, you can certainly always use the help on the back end. That's a nice added addition there. We will obviously keep you afloat, keep you abreast of all the different transfer portal movings and shakings here as we roll along. Another thank you here to our friends at Toothman Ford. Folks, we all know cars cost less in Grafton, so make sure you're getting your butt to Grafton and checking out all the great inventory they have on their website before you go. An awesome kind of a Rolodex of everything that they've got there in Grafton, so make sure you're checking that out, showing some love to Toothman Ford. They've been with us here since the early days. They're doing great work with WVU NIL, and again, we all know cars cost less in Grafton. Gentlemen, guy who might need a car to drive from West Virginia out to Phoenix, out to Glendale, right, is our dear Dante Stills. Of course, the NFL draft happening this past week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because like everything the NFL does now, it has to be a massive production and it has to be a 3-day long event for the NFL draft. Yes. We saw Dante Stills drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, of course. 6th round pick 213, I believe, was the number for Dante. Yep. That's awesome. Heads out there to a place in Arizona. A lot of turnover on that roster. There's certainly going to be an opportunity for him to carve out a role there, to get some playing time. I think that's a very nice fit for Dante and kind of the new blood and the youth infusion that they're adding to that defense. Saying goodbye to some veteran guys. Hassan Reddick left last year. Buda Baker looks like he's going to be moving on as well too. So some real opportunity for him there on that defense to carve out a role, maybe some leadership stuff down the road as well. Well, I want your guys' thoughts on Dante, and then Jed, you as well too. I know you have the list of the other Mountaineers and teams that they signed with as UDFAs, but let's start first with thoughts on Dante, him landing in Arizona.
Man, I mean, super pumped for him. Just to be drafted is a feat in itself. So congratulations. Young brother, go get you some. Stay hungry, man. Stay hungry. The best thing he can do in there is just go in there and try to win every day. Win his reps, and enjoy it, because it's a not for long league. So go in there and get what you can, make a splash, do the best, do everything you can. I mean, I think he's got that. I think he has what it takes, and with some other coaching as well, to really develop himself into a very fine player. Somebody who can play, a very nice career. And hopefully he does. Hopefully he does get to that 10-year mark. That's the magic mark in the NFL. But man, just go have fun and live the dream.
Oh, and we were going to ask you, and we'll get into the other kids as we talk here too. But before we do that, paint a picture for people, because we're going to talk about this with some of the other Mountaineers. This is what they're about to experience too. This all starts, you get drafted. Okay. Walk us through first what happens after the draft. When do you first visit the city? You got rookie mini camp coming up. Walk us through like the first month of what his life's going to be like. Not only him, but these other Mountaineers too. You went through it.
Yeah, well, you get the call, right? And you're hella pumped. You're with your family, hopefully, and you're doing your thing. You're stoked. I believe it was the next day I was in Gilman, Wisconsin. So I had a ton of friends and family. Basically, the whole town was invited to come hang out. The next day, I think I went to the school, kind of just talked to the kids, K through 12 there. So talked to all the kids and signed some autographs, and literally was on my way to Seattle the next day. Now, be prepared, right? Be prepared. You have to understand you're about to take somebody's position, right? Or somebody's about to kick you right out the door. So be prepared for, there's going to be some hostility. It's not going to be an open arms thing, maybe like it was in college right away. So study your playbooks, know inside and out, tell everybody else, all the outside distractions, hey, look, I got something I want to get done. I got something I'm doing. I'll call you when I need you. Stay laser focused, and understand your life is now football, right? So as before in college, it might have been, half, 3/4 of the day. Now it is fully football. So you are going to eat, sleep, and Schmitt football all day long. And you're going to mini camps and just do you, right? That's the best piece of advice I can give any young rookie. Just do you. Come in, try to, make the plays, be on point, study the film, do the same thing you were doing in college that kind of got you there, and do more. See what those older vets are doing, see what they're doing extra, right? And then top what they're doing. Those are good little tidbits to kind of help you spring yourself to the top of the chart, the depth chart.
And it's a great point, Owen. And of course, you have to figure that he's going to be leaning on Darius, who recently went through some of these things as well. And hey, what are the do's and don'ts? And Darius will counsel him. But it was cool to see Kaiser White. We talked in recent episodes how Kaiser, because remember that the head coach for the Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon's former D coordinator at the Eagles, so it made sense to bring Kaiser in as a free agent. It was nice to see Kaiser give him a shout out and welcome, another former Mountaineer into the fold out in the desert, right?
Yep.
Well, if you consider where Jonathan Gannon's staff was in this draft, as you talked about, Wes, a lot of turnover on the staff, and in transition years, you kind of anticipate that sometimes, right?
Sure.
Well, let's see what their plan or strategy might have been from a draft day standpoint. Okay, they went big up front with their first pick and Paris Johnson, so I think he's kind of a building block, big tackle. They think they can keep for 10 years. So where else did they go? Well, they got a true edge guy from LSU with their second pick.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's not a hybrid kid as much as he's a true edge rusher. Now, that's the thing about Dante. If you saw Dante potentially projected higher and wonder why he might have slid, well, the tweener aspect of it he got caught up in that. In other words, if you're playing an odd front defense, if you're a 3-down defense, and you're some version of a 3-4, you need a robust size to be first of all, he's not a nose guard. He's not a true nose in an odd front defense, right?
There's not many of those.
There's not many NFL, of those, period. Right? There used to be the Casey Hamptons of the world. Yep. They're harder to find, right?
Yep.
But these days, you almost have a better chance of translating into a heavy defensive end.
100%.
Aaron Smith, okay?
100%.
But he doesn't have the size for that. But he's also, let's say that you're not an odd front team, and most teams are some form of both, but you're not an odd front team and you're a true even front 4-down team. Well, you're looking at a different type of player, a Warren Sapp type, as a true 3-technique defensive tackle in that even front, right, Owen? So Dante's not necessarily a master of either of those things from a size standpoint. Now, he does possess the skill set that, in other words, his toolbox includes tools from both those positions, right? That's what makes him unique.
Correct.
So he does have an opportunity to bring versatility and value at multiple spots in your room, but he's not necessarily, from a size standpoint, going to be the first guy you're looking at either of those two sizes and those two schemes. And if you're going to ask him to be a true edge guy in an even front, that's not what he is either. He doesn't have that first step, right? His first step's more impressive on the interior than as an edge guy. So they went edge with their second pick. Now with picks 3 and 4, corner, wide out. And then the next pick in the 4th round, they went back to the O-line again. They're trying to build big up front. Then in the 5th round, they had 2 picks. They took a quarterback and they took a linebacker. Now in the 6th round, they took a cornerback. So again, if you see a pattern emerge here, it's they didn't take another guy with an earlier pick that remotely resembles Dante, right? That he's going to be in competition with. They drafted a true edge guy, and that's not what I consider Dante to be at all.
No.
So it very much appears that he fits pretty well with the plan, the way it unfolded in Arizona with Jonathan Gannon's staff. So, Owen,
that's a good breakdown.
Anybody, you're a guy who made something out of not much in terms of nobody expected a lot, and you made a multiple year career out of understanding the playbook, be willing to be the guy on special teams, being the first guy in every drill, knocking the living hell out of somebody, any chance you got to turn heads. I mean, those are the types of things Dante's necessarily going to have to do as the 213th overall pick. And you know what? He's the type of kid that might show up with just enough, chip on his shoulder. I mean, I do think that what he served himself well in doing this past year, he put on tape better habits in terms of more consistency. He was a more productive run defender this year. It wasn't about the flash as much as it was being about an every down player. And I think this was the best tape that he provided. And I think that's why it was wise for him to come back. But that's kind of where I see this big picture with Dante as the one Mountaineer who was drafted. Now they broke down. I saw different conference versions of how many kids got drafted from each league. Of course, the SEC led the way, the Big Ten not far behind. No surprise there. All right. But then I saw the numbers get kind of quirky. Like they tried to put the ACC slightly ahead of the Big 10, or Big 12, I should say. They didn't do it per team. I think we average more per team than the ACC.
Well, yeah, they've got 4 more teams than we do. Yeah.
So that we had the one kid in Dante, but we had other guys that are going to have a crack as well, and that's what we're going to get into here.
Well, give me one second here, Jed. Just real
ahead.
Quick. What you were talking about with Dante's? It's a weird double-edged sword in the NFL of being the tweener guy, being maybe the jack of all trades but master of none. It can work both ways, right? It can help your cause if you're able to still contribute enough. It can knock you if you're not good enough to really solidify one position. But I think Dante, a big opportunity in Arizona, like Owen, I know you know this well. I think most football fans know that you have a 53-man roster in the NFL, right? But you only get 46 hats on game day. So you only dress 46 on game day, and then you have 7 inactives. And this is something I've heard Mike Tomlin talk about a few, this was my 5th season working for the Steelers. I've heard Mike Tomlin mention this probably 4 or 5 times over the years, is how they're always looking for guys that can help them get those 46 helmets closer to 53, right? So if there's a guy for you that's a true edge rusher, but in desperate times you can bump them back to off-ball linebacker.
Yep.
You love those guys because now all of a sudden you have 47 helmets. You know what I mean? If you've got the safety who can also slide down and play nickel, right? So you get 46 helmets on game day, but you still want to feel like you have 50, 53 guys as possibilities out there. For someone like Dante, if you're good enough for them to keep you active at defensive end, but you can also help if they want to bump you inside, anything like that, that's how you really stick on. That's how you make these teams when you are those kind of, and I'm using air quotes here, right, tweener guys. And so I just wanted to add that for the listeners as well too.
The more you can do, for sure. Absolutely, Wes.
Yeah.
The more you can
do.
I mean, that's how the guys who are the tweener guys, create the value. So whether that's special teams opportunities for him, learning those positions where maybe he can like play stand-up end, and like you said, maybe even drop in the linebacker position. I mean, he's going to have to learn a lot of stuff. He's not going to get necessarily the opportunity to just be that one, hey, you're the edge guy.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So the better he soaks up all the information, is consistent in practice, shows the coaches that he's willing to work on whatever he can, but still dominates when it's his reps at whatever position he's playing at, obviously the value will be there. And he's going to get his opportunities. He's going to get his opportunities. He's going to get his shots. He's just got to know that, hey, remember, right? you're back to nobody again. Okay.
Great
So
point.
so really, but I know that sounds crazy, but if you can remember that, look, I have to re-impress everybody every day. If you can remember that and come to practice with that chip on your shoulder, dude, you will play for a very long time. But that can get discouraging and stuff. So mentally, if he can hold on to that as well, I think he's got a very great opportunity to play a long time.
That's well put. And just imagine, for instance, in Dante's circumstance, let's say he shows up and he starts showing out once they get pads on, and he shows that he's a worthy run defender on rundowns. All right. And maybe they have their true edge guy. Well, Wes, to your point, here's what that could look like with Dante. Maybe in nickel situations, they're willing to take their true edge guy and bump him out to Will and trust Dante enough in pass rush situations. He can hold the edge where they're both on the field at the same time. You see what I'm saying? If he's shown that he can fortify things on rundowns, maybe on the interior or some combination, maybe that's what they do with. He's not the true edge guy, but they can move the edge guy maybe around if they're going to chop the front up and play some tricks with their will backer.
Absolutely.
So, and they can trust Dante if he earns that faith to maybe slide out to a 5 technique outside the tackle, right, Owen? And who knows? I mean, but that only happens if you demonstrate your versatility, and that's what both of you are talking about.
Absolutely. He's going to get a chance to do that real soon here as rookie mini camps are going to open across the NFL momentarily. With that, of course, Dante, the lone Mountaineer, drafted, but there will be a handful of other guys who will have opportunities to make rosters, to get training camp invites. A quick little timeline for everybody, and Owen kind of touched on this, right? But you have rookie mini camp now, which is your draft picks and a lot of undrafted guys who get invited as well too. Like, if we're using the Steelers example, you might invite a couple kids from Duquesne, right? Some local colleges and things like that to come be part of your rookie mini camp as well too, with your draft picks, with your priority UDFA signings. Duck Hodges, that's a name I'm sure a lot of people remember. He was a mini camp find for the Pittsburghs, or a rookie mini camp find for the Steelers. You make it through that phase, then you go to OTAs and mini camp and training camp. So for a lot of these guys, they will be, in a way, right, singing for their supper, playing for their opportunity to get invited to training camp with a team. And Jed, I know you've got the rundown of where all the other Mountaineers have signed their UDFA rights, if you will. We got a handful of other guys who, like I said, are going to have an opportunity to stick on here as well.
Yeah, obviously, we want to start with BFW, with Bryce. It does kind of make you wonder, and other people have asked this question as well. What's the combine for? If you go to Indianapolis and put on the show that Bryce Ford-Wheaton put on, and then you go undrafted, right? I mean, really, what's it all about? I mean, yes, that's just one piece of a larger pie. But so anyway, Bryce gets picked up as an undrafted free agent by the Giants. Now, Brian Daboll has done a good job with that Giants offense. He's done a good work with Daniel Jones, the quarterback, who very much appeared to be heading in the wrong direction until, I'd say, last year. Now, once again, if you shoot Bryce's situation through the same filter that we did Dante's, it's a little different. Okay, now, first of all, some would argue that you might be better off, instead of going as a 7th round pick and kind of tethered to whatever team does pick you. Now, if you're an undrafted free agent and you're not taken in the 7th round, you have options open to you. You can pick your best situation. Correct. You and your agent and representation team can. So he decided that the Giants were his best option. Well, what did the Giants do in the draft? Now, we talked in Dante's case, they didn't take anybody like Dante, right? The Giants went corner, center. Their 3rd pick, Jalen Hyatt, receiver from Tennessee. So now you'd have to
the Biletnikoff winner, Jalen Hyatt.
Winner, that's right. Do with 5 touchdowns against Bama. So guy can play, but you'd have to more thoroughly vet and analyze the receiver room, okay, to see, because Bryce is going to be the type of kid that can wow you, and he's going to show up and he's going to do certain things the way he tests, and you're just going to think, well, you know what? If consistency is the missing element, I can coach that into him. So he's going to get his fair shake plus some, right? Because he has things that you just can't coach. Some of those attributes and some of his skills you can't coach. So he's going to get plenty of fair shakes. Let's just hope they're early. We know they'll be often, and he makes the most of those with Daniel Jones, with Brian Dable, with an offensive-oriented head coach. I do like that for him. Sam James, talk about offensive-oriented head coaches. They don't get much more offensive-oriented than Sean McVay.
Yeah.
So I do think Sam's a guy who's come a long way over the last 2 years, especially in terms of gaining a little bit of strength, putting a little bit more meat on his bones. As a technician and a route runner, his game's improved. His hands have certainly improved from a consistency standpoint. He credits Mike Joseph with the strength that he gained in his hands as a ball catcher. So he's headed to the Rams. Let's see if he makes the most of his opportunity. Wesley McCormick on the back end for West Virginia got an invite. He's headed to the Commanders. Let's hope he makes the most of his opportunity. And we'll close with this. This is kind of interesting. I want your thoughts here. Jazir Cox, who was kind of a Swiss Army knife for us, right? Nice pickup in the portal from North Dakota State, did some great things for us and was really helpful for us and made some plays on that back end. We talked in the past about the Eagles. First of all, he signed with the Eagles. The Eagles lost who to Arizona in free agency? Kaiser White.
Yep.
See where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Jazir Cox shows up in camp, and I'm sure he won't be the only Kaiser White wannabe in that Eagles camp, but that kind of shows you what they're angling towards or what they might have in mind in signing a guy like Jazir Cox. But that's what I see with it, guys.
No, absolutely. I wish all those guys the best of luck, and really, like I was saying, just about even Dante's situation. You got to go in there. You got to be professional. You got to take it serious. I mean, this is your one and only chance. Not one and only chance, but this is your one big shot right now. And going there with the consistency and the professionalism, the sky's the limit. I mean, it's crazy to me just getting the opportunity, right? What are you going to do with it? So I wish these guys the best, and good luck.
Owen, it's pretty crazy. The number of undrafted players on NFL rosters. I mean, they make up like a little over 30% of NFL rosters, I'm pretty sure. I remember looking this up last year during training camp. I don't know how we got on the topic, but we were doing a show and went to break, and I was like, I got to look this up. It's something like 31, 33%, like kind of like 1 in 3 and again, this is the full roster. Now this is not just your starting 11 on defense or anything like that. This is your full 53-man roster plus I think practice squads, because those guys are earning livings on the team as well too. It's something around 30% of guys. So listen, you see it every year. Certain guys that you expected to be drafted that weren't, right? And that can be difficult. That can be tough. I'm sure it is, but man, you look around the league, there's guys in the Hall of Fame that weren't drafted. There's guys that were all pros that weren't drafted. There's Super Bowl champions that had very solid, decade-long plus careers that weren't drafted. So it sucks, but the opportunity is always out there. In the National Football League, it doesn't matter if you're the first overall pick or if you're an undrafted free agent. If you can play, someone will find you. If you go out there and you make the most of it, they don't care how you got there. They don't care if you're a first-round pick. They don't care if you're a free agent signing, if you're undrafted. If you can play,
they don't care.
Kurt Warner, I mean, exactly. If you can play, they will find you. And so, and like Jed said too, sometimes you even find yourself in a better situation because you get to kind of handpick where you end up going. So certainly plenty of guys.
The statistics they say always exist in the extremes. That's where the gold is found in statistics. All right. Now that's true in the NFL as well. On the one extreme, if you look at the portion of top 5, top 10 picks who have gone to the Hall of Fame, it's crazy. It's like, depending on how you measure it, almost 10% of those picks, or some crazy number if you go high enough in the draft. So that's one statistical extreme. But the other statistical extreme is the other end of the roster, and that's the fringe element of the roster. And that's what you're talking about, Wes. That's where the 30% comes in, because the first thing you have to do before you get that second contract is you have to make the team to get the first contract. Again, Owen, we're preaching to the choir to you with this, right? So if you can crack through that fringe element of the roster and be among those 30% who weren't drafted, but show yourself in camp and show up and open eyes and find your way onto the 53-man, ultimately the 46-man, work your way up. who knows what the future might hold for you? Because as long as you get your foot in the door of that statistical extreme, anything is possible. And those are the stories that you're talking about. All these, outhouse to penthouse stories that from arena football to Super Bowl MVP, these things can and do happen. The question is, can you give yourself the opportunity to buy yourself more time for that to happen? I mean, Owen, you're the exception, which we've talked about. First of all, how many kids get to go from college or from high school to play major college football? Very small amount. How many of those get to play in the NFL?
Minuscule amount.
How many actually play in the NFL for multiple years, 3-4 years? Very small amount to get the pension, right? To even qualify. I mean, that's a much smaller amount. This is supremely difficult what these guys are about to try and embark on, but obviously can be life-changing if they find a way and pull it off, and that's why we hope they do.
Absolutely.
And it feels like, right, Big O, every year we see some player who's an undrafted free agent that ends up having a burst onto the scene type rookie season, right? I feel like most of the time it's a running back, but there's been a lot of other positions, certainly, where undrafted guys burst onto the scene as rookies, and you're like, man,
Speaking of running back, Wes, we got to mention Deuce.
Yeah. How about Deuce Vaughn and his dad going to
that's pretty cool.
His dad who works for Dallas. That was pretty cool. Listen, I can imagine certainly on this show, it's the Dallas Cowboys, right? I mean, unless it's one of those, like, unless you're a Cowboys fan, you always you want to throw up in your mouth every time you say something nice about them, right? But this is one of those moments that, forget what you feel about the Cowboys, a father getting to call his son and say, hey, you want to come to work with me next week? We're drafting you. I don't care who it is. That's pretty darn cool. I'm glad you mentioned that.
He left the room every time they discussed.
Every time they discussed
Chris,
it,
right? Yeah. They said he would stay in the room for every player evaluation, every player discussion, except when Deuce came up, and he left the room. And when he came back in the room before that pick, they looked at him and said, "We need you to make a phone call for us." And that's when he got. I get teared up thinking about it.
It's pretty cool.
It's so cool.
It is awesome. It absolutely is. Yeah, very cool. So it was a lot of great stuff. It was a great NFL draft. Good for Deuce. Good for Dante. And hopefully for all the best here for the rest of the Mountaineers, who are going to be in very quick order, like I said here, finding themselves in rookie minicamp and starting that entire process of, singing for your supper and trying to make one of these 53-man rosters or practice squads. Final thank you for this edition of ITG to our friends at Fortis for roof performance and financial security guaranteed. Make sure you check it out, fortis.us.com. Boys, it was good to get back together. This was fun. We had a lot of different topics to chew on today.
Yeah. There's no off season, right, Owen?
There's no off season. That's right. So
so brings back great memories. So it's always a good chat.
Absolutely. That'll do it for this edition of ITG. We'll be back with you guys next week. As always, make sure you're rocking and rolling with us on all of our different social media channels. In the Gun Podcast is where you find us. Jed's still pumping out those cool ITG shorts every single week. And, of course, the one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the weekend as we roll into May here. Hopefully we'll get some sunny weather this weekend. And let's go Mountaineer baseball. Let's keep beating them down there at the Mon and maybe get ourselves a Big 12 title here in the process. For Owen Schmitt and Jed Drenning, I'm Wesley Uhler. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week. You've been in the Gun.